Chapter 12. Fishing. Antony was drawn to Estolia 10 years after Zacharias. His life was anchored in a love of the sea, and he established the township of Pirates' End. Once he settled in Estolia, he asked to return to his homeland, to the east beyond Manos and Palmyra, to ask his 3 brothers and their families to consider living in Estolia. Their boat-building skills were necessary, allowing for commerce between Estolia and her neighbors. Antony increased their knowledge of the sea and its denizens, explained that the Leviathan that Zacharias described in his earliest accounts was not, as Key had postulated, one of the Shober Aqus, a sword-toothed lizard and servant of the Egyptian god Sobek. It must have been one of the Zytheraphine, voracious monsters of the deep, capable of consuming an entire horse in minutes. Of course, we know now that the Shober Aqus is the Nile crocodile, and the Zytheraphine is a shark. Xavier Archimedes Zacharian, Capitulo 86. It was a perfect day to fish for Antuinia. Zacharian walked towards the bow of the Dia de Promessa. His birth anniversary was coming up fast. Amador suggested that they attempt to catch one of the big fish for the celebration feast. The wind was brisk as they set off from Pirates' End before dawn. The sun breasted the horizon just as they reached the open sea. The sunrise was typical, swiftly staining the shores of Pequeño and Corlier with reds and yellows and oranges. The colors were intensifying when the wind began to pick up. For the next half an hour, the ship flew across the water, heading due east. Marcan, Key's second son, was the captain of the Dia de Promessa. He was scanning the horizon anxiously. If this keeps up, we will be visiting Palmyra. Antony squinted up at the sun and sniffed the air, before he said, "Wind will slack soon." He returned his attention to the fishing net he was mending. Zacharian sat down out of the way of the sailors. He knew his own limitations. Sailing was one of his weakest skills. His brother did not look at all disturbed. He looked like he wanted nothing more than to be abducted by the wind. He felt smug satisfaction when he remembered that his was the advice that resulted in the lavish decorations adorning the robe that Amador was wearing. "Sebastian made me a robe," Amador said to him. "He says I may begin wearing it whenever I wish." "Why do you frown?" Zacharian asked. "Is this not one of your deepest desires?" Amador ran his hand over the smooth fabric, picking up one of the sleeves and then stroking the edges. "It should be purple and green, the colors which symbolize Estolia." A muscle in his jaw clenched, his chin jutting, his lips compressed with a line of white outlining them. Zacharian took it from Amador, looking at the fine workmanship. He had known of Sebastian's gift. Had watched him working on the hem with meticulous care. It was a light tan color, with a much darker thread used to embroider intricate patterns at each border. He thought about the dyes available to them. Green and purple were the most difficult colors. Attempts to make purple out of the easily available blue and red dyes resulted in disaster. When combined, they corrupted each other and ruined the item being dyed. They were able to create a green dye out of the rinds of mayberry fruit. But purple eluded them. "Have you noticed the island goats?" Zacharian asked his brother. "Recall the ones we brought to Promessa and think back to the contrast." They had offered to bring 6 island goats to Promessa and pick up a similar number to bring back to the palace. When the 6 mingled with the Promessa herd, the differences between them became very stark. The Promessa animals had, without exception, purple legs and bellies. They saw why when the near-white parts of the coats of the new animals turned brilliant purple after they waded across the Purple River. The water itself wasn't purple, but Zacharian had a theory that there was something about the natural oils of the goat hide that picked up the faint tracery of Tarsus dye in the water and intensified it. "Why do we not use the wool from the island goats kept near Promessa?" Amador followed up on his suggestion, and soon the artisans were tackling the problem. Zacharian frequently joined them as they experimented with different dyes, techniques, and ideas. His first idea, to soak the fabric in the Purple River, did not work. When he suggested that a new robe should be woven out of the purple wool, he was told that the garment would be too warm for most of their seasons. The solution, for the robes of office that his brother wished to wear, was focused more on dyeing the threads with which the robe could be adorned. Soon a variety of dyes were created, and the final effect was a beautiful abstract design bordering the robes, setting off the role and rank of the man wearing them. Amador designed an instructional system that would, in future generations, take place in the semi-subterranean temple. He pointed out that his robes should have all the colors they were able to create: dark brown, purple, and green threads. But those who were just beginning their studies, acolytes, should only have the green threads decorating their robes. Somewhere in between his own heavily embroidered robes and the simple design adorning the acolytes, they would have a robe decorated in purple and green to denote advanced learners' place in the hierarchy he was still developing. When Zakarian saw the final touches used for Amador's robe, however, he was impressed. One of the items that was recovered from the anchorman was a fine gold wire that could be used as if it was thread. The sleeves were bordered in the gold thread, denoting Amador's ultimate position as the religious and spiritual leader of the Estolian people. The artisans were now experimenting on fabrics and dyes, trying to come up with a more permanent dye. The first flag of Estolia was created by Estoliana and Mari, using fabrics that were among the cargo of the anchorman. But they wished to create a new one someday, using their ingenuity and intuition to come up with dyes that could be used for this purpose. All thoughts of fabric, dyes, goats, and robes died down with the wind. For the next hour they focused on the large school of Antuinia circling the Dia de Promessa as the wind turned breathless.